Ever since my sister was younger, she talked about wanting to be a mom. She was one of those that was amazing with kids, babysat at a young age, etc. When she was older, she tried to get into a relationship, but she failed. Eventually, she went through the process of getting an anonymous donor and got pregnant. She gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, and sadly only got to raise her for 7 months before she died of an unexpected brain hemorrhage. It was a terrible time in our lives. I got custody of her little girl and struggled immensely. I still feel guilty that I am raising this child that my sister worked so hard for and didn't get to. When the little girl began speaking, around the age of 1, she tried calling me mama a few times out of hearing other babies at her daycare doing the same, but I corrected her to my name. I love her so much, but I'll always be Aunt EX to her. As she's gotten older, she's never tried to call me that on her own. She's currently 6 and is a beautiful, confident, and smart little girl that knows a lot about her mom, also knowing that she's immensely loved. Recently, my mom confronted me privately that I don't allow my niece to call me mom. I always assumed she'd have the opposite issue. Not my reasoning, but still what I assumed. She said I was raising her and it was wrong. It was coming across to my niece that while I love her enough to adopt her, I did this when she was 18 months, and raise her, I didn't enough to be mom. I said this was how things worked. My mom told me that it was going to backfire in time. I've been thinking about it a lot more and have wondered if I made a mistake. Am I being an idiot by doing this? No idiots here, but as an adopted child I can give some insight. If you do decide to go ahead with continuing to be called auntie, please fully explain to her why. Also maybe find out what she wants, because if she really wants to call you mom but is not allowed, I can understand what your mom is saying. It comes down to this: your sister is sadly not here anymore, but this beautiful young girl is. Find out what she wants. This is really a great thing you are doing for her, well done. You are the idiot. You're her adopted mother, and your sister is her biological mother. It's important for her to know where she came from, but the way you're doing it makes you seem like the lesser alternative, since you'll never live up to this mythical mom that your sister could have been and the other kids have. It's a mild you are the idiot, and I wouldn't call it a mistake, but for what it's worth I think you need to get rid of the guilt and fully step into the role that your sister would probably want you to have. Not the idiot. In my opinion, it's honoring your sister. She wanted to be a mom so bad, but when it happened she died. Many people lose parents early, and sometimes the adoptive parents want to be called mom or dad, sometimes not. It won't affect this child calling OP auntie. In my opinion, it may even be better, because there wouldn't be any confusion later in life if OP and niece have a physical difference or OP has another child. My wife, 33, and I, 33, were at a family dinner at my parents' house with my brother, 30, his wife, 29, and their new baby. The little guy is about 11 weeks old. My mom and her family have always been one to compliment people on their looks and weight, so when my Sil came over with the baby, my mom and aunt were gushing about how great she looked. She is a fairly active person and does stay in shape, which is good for her. However, she embarrasses easily and is quite uncomfortable when people talk about her body. She just made a comment on breastfeeding a lot and taking walks with the baby. My wife was sitting next to me, rolls her eyes and starts muttering to me that I'm sure throwing up your whole pregnancy didn't help either. I gave her a look but didn't comment. She made snide remarks about my Sil the whole night. On the car ride home, my wife is going on and on about my Sil, how smug she must be to be looking like she does so soon after having a baby, and how full of herself to be putting her appearance before being a mother, and then brought up the vomiting again. Now I've known my wife since we were in junior high, and she's always made comments about other girls like this, always. She's a bit on the bigger side and seems to have resentment towards thinner women. Anyway, I pointed out that my Sil wasn't making herself sick, but had a condition while pregnant that caused her to be like that. Can't think of the name of it. My wife laughed and said she was sure that's what she wanted us to think, and that my Sil has always been about her looks, and that she was surprised the baby wasn't scrawny, considering she can't possibly eat enough to be feeding him. I got really annoyed and said it was my mom and aunt that always made comments, not my Sil, and told my wife she didn't have to be so snide. My wife went off at me for defending my Sil and started asking/accusing me of finding her attractive. I was so blown away by the meltdown that I told her I didn't want to talk to her for the rest of the ride home. She took this as me saying I do find my Sil attractive. I told her no, that I just don't want to deal with her insecurities right now. Well, my wife started crying, calling me cruel, and that I don't have to point out the fact that she's insecure. Still annoyed by her accusations, I told her she doesn't have to tear people down to make herself feel better. When we got home, she went straight to bed, and I get a lovely explosion of texts from her friends telling me how much of an idiot I am. I know her feelings are hurt, but I don't think she has to make comments about others who have done nothing to slight her other than looking the way they do. Not the idiot. I would strongly recommend she go to counseling. If you don't think she'd go on her own, maybe offer to go to couples counseling to talk through and finally resolve this toxic behavior. Not only are her comments incredibly rude and woman bashing, she then turns it around on you. Like she can't fathom you being correct about her toxic behavior, so she assumes you must be crushing on your sill, which sounds crazy. On top of it, she then recruits her friends to harass you, which breaks trust in the marriage. Not the idiot. I know it's hard for your wife to imagine this, but you are absolutely right. Some people are naturally thin. It's not fair, and I don't blame her for feeling bad about it, but I do blame her for being toxic and judging others because of their appearance. Does she want to be judged based on her appearance? No, of course not. She should treat others the same way. Even if Syl did have an eating disorder, that's no excuse to talk bad about her. Eating disorders are serious. Not the idiot. As someone who is naturally on the thin side, I've dealt with women like your wife my whole life, and that hypocrisy is infuriating. I can only imagine the ruckus your wife would make if anyone negatively commented on her weight or size, yet she deems it appropriate to talk about others that way. It's never okay to treat another person like that. It's also not okay for her to have people gang up on you and call you names when you guys disagree. Your wife needs professional help. I have a 16-year-old son, and he has 4 half-siblings who are all younger than him. I was only ever with his mom for a brief period of time, and we both agreed prior to sleeping with each other that we were on the same page about not having a kid. Obviously, that didn't work out because she got pregnant. I asked her to abort, she told me she'd changed her mind, and she kept the baby. I wasn't thrilled about being a dad. After paternity was established, I said about paying child support, and that was it. I had no intention of wanting to be in his life, especially because my own parents had kicked me out and I was still a kid myself. After a few months though, I felt the need to be there and actually be a father, so I put aside my own feelings and put him first. We are incredibly close today, and I'm so glad and grateful that I got to be his dad. I was 18 when I had him, and over the years I was lucky enough that I was able to become financially independent and in essence retire early, so I'm able to give my son experiences that I never had. He chose to live with me when he was 11, which was a huge sore spot for his mom, but he'd always begged prior to that because his brothers and sisters would break his stuff, and he'd get yelled at because he's the oldest, etc. His mom has always been courteous, but over the last few years, she has become more and more resentful that my son gets more than her other kids. She is by no means poor, but obviously, her resources are spread over 5 kids, whereas mine is spread over 1. It was his birthday last week, and as a gift, I bought him a car, which he'll be needing soon anyway, and which I've had the cash aside for years. When his mom found out, she called me furiously on the phone and told me that I'm an idiot for making her other kids feel bad, because I've never spent a penny on them, and every time he goes to visit it's obvious his dad is spending money on him. I snapped back and told her that what, she expects me to shell out on kids I have no obligation to just so she doesn't feel bad. She said that all the years of them seeing my son go on vacations, his clothes, his mannerisms, etc. made her and her kids feel bad, and she told me that I was selfish for having a fund for only my son because none of her other kids will be able to afford college. I told her that's an unfortunate reality for kids who have different parents, and it is what it is. She's normally pretty level-headed, so I honestly have no idea why she thinks it's acceptable to ask me to pay for her other kids too. I've never tried to flaunt anything via my kid, I just want him to have the best I can give him. Not the idiot. If you can and you enjoy it, give your kid nice things. The reality is that not everyone will have equal means and opportunity in this world, and if your ex wants better for the rest of her kids, then she needs to find a way to provide that for them. It's not on you. I don't want to call her a bad mom because I don't know her, but she should be grateful that her son's father wants to be there and take care of her son, and she should be happy for her son that he gets to have these things. It's on her to provide for her other children or curb their expectations if she can't, won't. No idiots here. I think your ex is just very unhappy that one of her kids gets better treatment than the other kids. You aren't the idiot for only wanting to take care of your own son. She isn't the idiot for wishing her other kids could have the same fiscal responsibility from their own fathers. I think you might need to have a serious conversation with her, to work out any unpleasant feelings she's having about this. It wouldn't be fun, but it might be beneficial so you two can have a good working relationship for the sake of your son. Everyone's the idiot here. You may not be intending to, but you will be causing resentment in your kid's future relationship with his siblings. Is that fair? Maybe not, but you don't seem to be considering it. The other kids will see their brother succeeding in life in a way that they may never will because he has a rich father, something they don't. Try to consider scaling your gifts back a little. You can have a will to him, you can have safety nets for him if things go bad, but showering him with things that his siblings don't get is not going to do anything but ruin the other kid's perspective of him, and they'd actually be justified in thinking badly about it. I had my twins when I was 17. I dropped out of school and moved in with a friend who was helping me support them no rent. I got a job, and over the next few years I started college and got another job to pay for it. For most of their early childhood, I worked 2 or 3 jobs and took classes at a community college. Some bad events took place at my friend's house and I was forced to move into an apartment. Good news? A classmate with a boy my girl's age was looking for a place, so we became roommates and kind of co-parents. Worked great, we lived together until I was almost out of university. Still working 2 jobs, I usually had night and early morning shifts and she had day shifts. Someone was always with the kids, and when she started working more we got a babysitter. At this point, we were still very poor. We wore bras and underwear with holes in them because we didn't have money for new ones. She got engaged, moved in with the guy, and I was forced to find a cheaper apartment I could make on my own. I graduated, got work as a bookkeeper in a legal office, and started earning enough to confidently stay afloat and afford a reliable babysitter. We stayed in the apartment until my kids had moved out and I saved enough to move to a house in a small town, years later. Now, my girls are posting mean-spirited comments on Facebook and complimenting each other. One will post something about "I didn't know how poor I was until I realized how big a yard can be," and the other one will say "I always knew." Other kids with competent mothers had huge backyards and we had an apartment. Complaining about yards, being raised by babysitters, always moving, I got sick of it. I replied on one of their posts saying they always had a safe home with food and at least one adult around to protect them, which is more than other children, and they shouldn't be whining like this when they were competently cared for. My daughter deleted it, and some friends have pointed out that growing up poor still isn't easy and they were likely bullied and felt some uncertainty for the future. I've been told a good mother would let them vent now so they can come to terms with their past. While I see the reason, I also feel calling me incompetent as a mother is mean and uncalled for. No idiots here. I understand why the comments hurt you, but they also have a right to feel however they do about their childhood. The competent mom comment is harsh, but I think you also know it was true. You were a teen when you got pregnant. No teen mom is competent. The consequence of getting pregnant young is things like this. Mistakes were made, the kids did pay for them. I'm not trying to be too harsh with you, you did your best, but being a teen mom had its ramifications even beyond being poor. I can understand feeling neglected because much of your time growing up was spent with a sitter. You are the idiot. You brought not 1 but 2 kids into this world before you were in a position to take care of them, and then you're mad they're upset about your shortcomings? Sure, you worked hard, but you still brought them into this world before you were ready. Their childhood was probably significantly harder than those who grew up with parents who were ready, and they should be allowed to speak their minds about it. Everyone's the idiot here. Your daughters are idiots for venting on Facebook. They're entitled to their feelings, but those conversations should be had in private. You're an idiot for bringing 2 girls into this world at 17 years old when you had absolutely no means for caring for them. I mean seriously, what did you expect as a 17-year-old single mom? This is incredibly irresponsible, and you gave your daughters a subpar life. For the past 2 years, a group of friends and I have been planning a week-long trip to Orlando to visit Disney World and Universal Studios in 3 weeks. The first rule we made when we started to plan this trip is that it would be child-free. The 2 people in our group that have children agreed that their children were young enough not to be traumatized from not going to Disney at 3 years old. For personal reasons, one of my buddies had to drop out of the trip last minute. Since everything has been paid for, he said that if I could find someone to take his place, he wouldn't expect to be reimbursed in any way, except for sweets from Honeydukes and mouse ears. I managed to find someone, but before I could say anything to the group, my girlfriend, hopefully soon to be fiancée, I planned a purpose on the trip, told me her sister wanted to take the empty spot. I asked how, because her sister just had a baby and at the time of the trip she will be 6 or 7 weeks. She said that her sister would just bring her daughter and we would make it work. My girlfriend is a huge pushover when it comes to her sister and has never said no to her before. I called her sister and tried to politely tell her that everyone going on this trip is either in their late 20s or early to mid 30s. She wouldn't listen and started rambling about her daughter getting pictures with Mickey and Elsa. She also named her daughter Elsa, by the way, and how much fun she'll have. I interrupted her and said that the trip was for adults only and her newborn was not allowed. I then pointed out that a lot of the places we'll be going to after the parks are adults only and no one would want to stay behind with her and the baby. Plus, I don't think an unvaccinated newborn should be taken to Disney. I was called an idiot and how dare I tell her how to parent her child, and it was creepy that a bunch of adults wanted to go to Disney without children. The last thing I told her before I hung up was that the empty spot had already been taken by someone, so sadly she cannot come, but we'll take plenty of pics in our coordinated Disney-bound outfits and wizard robes to show her later. I think she cussed me out before I ended the call. My girlfriend thinks I was mean to her sister and said I should apologize for not giving her a chance to come on the trip. Not the idiot, the thought of bringing my child to a place that freaking crowded while he was too little to have his shots terrifies me. I had trouble taking my kid to the grocery store. Plus, from what I've heard, making periodic trips from the park to the hotel is something you should try to avoid. And with a newborn, that's just not going to be avoidable. I might throw in an apology for coming across so harshly to the sister for your wife's sake, but you weren't in the wrong whatsoever for wanting her to stay home. Not the idiot. The rules and expectations were well established and agreed upon long before she came into the picture. Add to that you said a couple of your friends have kids and agreed to the rules. She should be no exception. If you let her bring her baby, then you cannot expect the others to not want to bring their kids. The sister needs to either agree to the established rules for the trip or not go. End of story. Everyone's the idiot here. Your girlfriend invited or was steamrolled into inviting her sister despite the trip being child-free. Why was it your problem to argue with the sister? The girlfriend should have been responsible for telling her sister that the invitation was only valid for people coming along without kids, period. If she doesn't like it, she's free to go to Disneyland with other people or by herself with her child. It's a free country. You didn't need to get involved and escalate it to an argument.